Welcome to another episode of the Woo Woo Girls Guide to Infinite Wisdom. And tonight's topic is Virgo and crystals. And with your hosts, Mary Oquendo and the lovely Laura Sanger-Watkins. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Mary.
So,
How are
it's a
you?
lovely, I'm just peachy. So let's talk about Virgos.
Okay. Well, I have a Virgo rising, and I've got a couple other planets in Virgo, so I'm not being biased or anything like that. Virgo is sort of some of the energy that kind of grounds my particular chart. Otherwise, I'd be like a balloon that someone blew up and let go. Virgo, if you were born between August 22nd and September 23rd, then you fall under the sign of Virgo. I always laugh because most of the signs are either animals or humans. And the symbol for Virgo is the Virgin. And when I was growing up, everyone thinks Virgin Mary, they think prissy, prude, pure, and I don't. I actually think of it more as what virgin originally meant is someone that didn't know or need a man. And I often think of Artemis, the goddess Artemis, the archetype of the huntress who is on her own and, doesn't want or need anybody and is extremely independent and a very independent thinker, and for the men too. And it's not it's not that they're not interested in romance. That's not true at all. It's just that they don't define themselves by their romantic partners. Virgos are extremely active mentally because they're a mutable sign like Gemini, Sagittarius, and the opposite of Virgo is Pisces. Yes. So like these other signs, they're very of the mind, and very flexible. So of all the earth signs, Virgo is more laid back, even though they have a reputation for being very neurotic and anxious. That is also true at times. However, they're much more adaptable to change than, say, a Taurus or the other earth sign, Capricorn. And because that mutable energy kind of tempers that earthiness. So it gives them a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more of a roll with the punches kind of a mode of thinking. I always think of them as the doers, where Aquarius has all, they're very idealistic, a lot like Aquarius, where Aquarius wants to shake trees and start a protest and lobby politicians. Like Virgo has a hammer in their hand building houses for humanity. And they don't really want the glory. They just really want to do good. And they're very caring and very giving. And even though they do seem to be kind of detached and cool, it's because they're a little protective of their emotions because they don't have a lot of armor. Unlike Cancer or even Scorpio, like Virgo doesn't have, and that's not, they do have this kind of a image of innocence, but it's only because they're not very cynical and they're kind of trusting. So they're a little self-protective at first because the truth is when they really care about somebody, they do it all the way. They don't hold back. They're not afraid. They're not emotionally unavailable, but it takes a while for them to kind of feel that they're comfortable enough to let go and do that. Virgos are also one of the stereotypes that they're nitpicky or very critical, but they're never as hard on anybody as they are on themselves, which is why when I look at stones for them, I always look for stones for like self-love, self-forgiveness, and to kind of ease the mind. They're very analytical. They can't even help it. They're excellent at solving problems. If you come to them with the problem, their advice is probably going to be really excellent because they're going to think it through. And because all their life they've been thinking and analyzing and compartmentalizing and seeing things, and they might not come right out and say it, but they're excellent students of human nature. They can peg somebody a mile away. And if a Virgo, if you're really good friends with a Virgo and they tell you, what, I don't like that person, pay attention because they see something that you might not see. I've always trusted Virgo's instincts when it comes to other people. Let me try to think what else about them that's fun.
That's actually really good to know because I'm thinking, who do I know is Virgo so I can go to them when I have ideas and sort of like run it past them.
Yeah, you know what they're good for that too is they're very good about feet on the ground. You know what I mean? They're really good about applying what they know. This is the best combination of the mercurial energy. Their ruler, the planet of Mercury, is the ruler of Virgo. It's the same ruler as Gemini. So they're idea people. Yet, because they're an earth sign, they're very practical and pragmatic. So they're excellent at taking an idea and putting it to work. Their only hang up is sometimes they tend to overthink, and they might freak themselves out before even starting because they could see all the problems a million miles in advance, which in a way is good, but it can paralyze them. So they kind of need to be pushed a little bit to get past that. But if someone has their back and they're comfortable and they feel that, you know what, like, you know, they just need to be reminded, because they know this deep down, but they need to be reminded that they can handle whatever life throws at them. But they have a hard time staying in the present moment because they're always thinking ahead and trying to, like, their mind is going down like several paths at once, trying to figure out all the problems that can happen before they even take an action. And they need to just take the action. And then if the problems arise, they can fix it. I mean, they give excellent advice, you know, business advice, but also interpersonal advice. And they'd probably be really good at, if you want someone to be like, well, what could be the pitfalls? They'll tell you, you know, and they come across sometimes a little bit as blunt, but it's not that they're blunt. It's just they're not bullshitters. You know, they don't tell you what you want to hear because they don't, you know, it's not they don't want to hurt your feelings. They're tactful. They're not like, Sagittarius can be a little bit blunt and not very tactful, and it's not because they don't care about your feelings. It's just they don't think before they speak. Virgos are very tactful, but they don't sugarcoat anything. So if you want the truth, they'll tell you the truth, but you have to be prepared for what you're about to hear. And they're not going to be mean about it, but you might not like it because they're not going to lie to you. They're not going to blow sunshine up your butt. They are extremely honest people. Yeah, and they're also very you know, when in friendships and in relationships, they're very loyal, they're very trustworthy. You know, they're solid, good people. I mean, you can say that about every sign. But, you know, Virgos have a tendency to get a little bit nervous, and they have a lot of nervous energy. They need to physically work out. They need to have some kind of physical expression. Otherwise, it gets pent up in their third and second chakra. They have a lot of digestive issues because they internalize their stress. They don't want to be a burden to anybody, so they don't talk freely about what's bothering them. They'd rather focus on you. So a lot of them have digestive issues. One of the things, yoga be an amazing thing for a Virgo to do because it is a physical, but it's gentle, and it can help kind of bring their mind and their body together. So sometimes they neglect their body because they're always up in their brain.
Yeah, and I bet they would benefit from meditation as well.
Definitely.
Wasn't that the topic of our very last podcast?
Yes, it was. Maybe we should find every Virgo we know and email the link to them.
We should.
I had a roommate who was a Virgo, and she was an artist and very creative person and very, that's the other thing, animal whisperers and plant whisperers. Virgo rules the 6th house on the chart, which is the house of health, plants, animals. A lot of Virgos tend to be drawn towards earth medicines like herbalism. A lot of them are drawn towards alternative methods of healing, energy work. A lot of them are very much drawn towards animals and plants, and they're very good at caring for them. And, you know, they're almost like, maybe because they do kind of have this innocent demeanor about them, animals just walk right up to them and, like, flop right by their feet. I've seen it happen a million times. They're like Snow White out in the woods.
You know what I found really interesting about Virgos? And I was reading this in your blog, which, by the way, we really should put a link up to it we have a link up to it on our website. But anyway, you make mention of it, and I think this is hysterical, that Virgos are hypochondriacs. And without knowing, and I'm not going to mention their name, and without knowing the birthday of this particular person, I just checked it out, and because they are the biggest hypochondriac I know. And, they're Virgos.
Not all of them, but, you know, the ones that are, I mean, I often think of, if we want to go for, like, classic archetypes, I think of, remember The Odd Couple? You know I'm going to go with Felix. You know,
yes.
Like Felix, I don't know Felix's sign, but Felix to me is the embodiment of a Virgo that has some poor aspects, which usually just means there's conflicts between the planets on their chart. And, Virgos they're the kind of people that'll have a tickle in their throat and go on WebMD and be convinced by midnight after reading everything that they're like half dead. You know, and, you know, you have to, they need to stay off WebMD. But the other thing, on the flip side of that, if you're not the hypochondriac, they're the very, you know, intense, intuitive healer. I mean, they're very tapped into that physical plane of the body, and they'd probably make an excellent Reiki practitioner. If they haven't ever, yeah, I mean, they're very sensitive to that. But yeah, hypochondriac, unfortunately, because they're very focused on their own health and the health of other people, they can get, and then they end up having too much information, and then their fear runs away with them. And then WebMD is a bad idea for these.
Well, WebMD as a general rule is a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't go there anymore because, like I said, I've got a lot of Virgo in my chart, and it's squared on my Gemini, which is a poor aspect. So I'm not calling myself a hypochondriac, but I've been known to completely think I was dying by then I have to talk. The Gemini then kicks in and is like, oh please, you're no doctor. Go see a doctor. You're that worried.
Yeah, I mean, even as a Scorpio, I have, and I don't do it anymore either, because I think the first time I freaked out when I thought I had cancer, I simply stopped going on to WebMD. That's just asking for trouble.
It really is, and the doctors don't like it either.
Well, that's good to know.
Every single doctor I've gone to, and I'll be like, well, I was on WebMD, and they're like, oh, for God's sake, stay off WebMD. I'm sure everyone that goes on WebMD comes into the doctor and is like, I'm dying. But yeah, Virgos are, it's interesting that if they are interested in herbalism, I mean, they have natural green thumbs. I have a black thumb. I kill everything. It's very sad. My husband is much better with plants than I am, so I usually just let him handle that because, I always feel very terrible. I'm like the Ted Bundy of plants, so I try to avoid that. The other good thing about Virgos too, besides, I mean, they love nerdy research. If you need someone to do, if you're the kind of person that hates looking things up or getting the legal ramifications of something you're interested in doing, they love that stuff. They make excellent lawyers too because they love to analyze and they love to argue, and they're great at it. So if you've got a position in your company for that, if you need someone to do something that they love that stuff. At least the ones that I've known. A lot of Virgos tend to go into finance and law, but they also tend to do a lot of nonprofit work as well, and not just working in the office. They're like, if you go into any soup kitchen in America, I will guarantee at least one person behind that line, maybe two, is a Virgo.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm actually now checking somebody else's profile on Facebook, seeing what their birthday is.
So the stones that I recommend for Virgos, the traditional birthstones for August and September are peridot and sapphire, which will definitely help enhance their energy. I've also chosen a couple fire stones to kind of give them a little more motivation to push past some of that overanalyzing and take more action rather than trap themselves with their brain. So I always love carnelian and citrine for that purpose. Some of the other green stones for the heart chakra that I like for them is the tourmaline.
Yeah, I like green tourmaline. I found a lot of uses for green tourmaline.
It's a really great all-purpose healing stone.
Mm-hmm.
And moss agate. And I'm not
moss
sure
agate is another. It's a growth stone. It's a stone of growth. So, which, by the way, and just getting back to your death wish with your plants, moss agate. If you put a piece of moss agate in with your plants, maybe throw in a little rose quartz as well, you might find your plants doing a whole lot better.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I probably would need to buy a whole moss agate planter if I really want to guarantee that I don't kill them.
Well, you know what? I was, for a long time, was really, really, really bad with plants too. I mean, shoot, I killed cactuses. I mean, I honestly think that's
the only thing I've never killed.
Yeah, so I think being able to kill a cactus is sort of like a skill.
That's a gift. That is a gift.
It is. It truly is a gift.
It's like a plant assassin.
Yeah, so I'm like one step above. Ooh, yeah, I'm like a plant ninja. Ninja assassin. But I started using the moss agate in particular and some rose quartz, and my indoor plants I've not killed. The only plants that have been killed in my house has been because of spirits.
Oh, no. Does he eat them?
Oh, yeah. So I got to watch what plants I have because for the blind dog, he just simply really and truly loves to eat plants. But anyway, back to Virgos.
I would love to know what sign Spirit is.
He's a Scorpio, which is going to be really interesting. Yes, when we do the podcast on Scorpio, that's going to be really interesting because both him and I are Scorpios.
Huh. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's funny because I was just thinking I have a cousin who's a Virgo and she is a psychiatric nurse. And I have another friend who's a Virgo who also works in the medical field. Oh, and my stepsister, she works in the ICU. She's like a technician with the machines that keep people alive. I don't know her exact title, but that's what she does. So it's interesting because I'm trying to think of all the Virgos I know and what kind of jobs they have, and a lot of them are. And I have another one that works for a nonprofit. I'm trying to think in my head.
Now, what's the opposite
really
side of Virgo again? Did you say that was Pisces?
That's the opposite.
The opposite of Virgo?
Yep.
When a sign is opposite, what does that mean?
Well, how I like to describe it is when you're dealing with opposites, you're dealing with the same modalities. So as a Scorpio, your opposite would be Taurus. So you're fixed water, Taurus would be fixed earth. So you see things similarly, you have the same values, but you express them so differently that sometimes there's misunderstandings. With Virgo, with Virgo and Pisces, there's that mutable energy, and Virgo is earth and Pisces is water. So with the water, you've got a lot more tapped into the fluid, into the emotion, the intuition, the dreaminess, and not to mention that, Pisces is also ruled by Neptune. So you've got a very dreamy, artistic, fluid sign. And then you've got Virgo, which is, feet on the ground, head out of the clouds. I mean, the head might be lost in analysis, but it's not in dreams. It's in practicalities and thinking and thinking and thinking. And so you've almost got like a head versus intuition, like, brain versus, logical brain versus intuitive brain. So even though they have very similar values and they might, they express themselves so differently that usually when you have a planet within your chart, how it comes up with how you get along with other people, it's more like you kind of meet somewhere halfway. There's a compromise. There might be a very strong attraction or a very strong repulsion. Usually there's a strong attraction, but then there's a lot of clashing, and there has to be some kind of communication and some work to get past that. The same thing with the other mutable signs they call that square. When your other signs that are 90-degree angle on the chart. And for the other mutable signs, that would be Gemini and Sagittarius. Those are square to Virgo. And it's very similar to being opposite, just not as intense. So there's an attraction. There might be a little bit of a repulsion. There's going to be difficulties in seeing things the same way. Even if the values are the same, it can be very difficult and frustrating to work with somebody who's your square. As a Scorpio, your husband is square to you as a Leo. So you have the same values, you just communicate them differently, and because your communication styles are so different, it comes across as conflict when you're really pretty much agreeing. It's just how you're saying it is getting in the way. You know what I mean? So within a chart, how that kind of tension works is, and everybody that's got super smooth trines and sextiles, and again we're talking angles, if all your planets and signs are like in harmony and get along, you are going to be so boring and lazy. I mean, you might have a charmed life. It might look like you have a charmed life, but there's not a lot of inner drive. When you've got conflict in your chart, it usually means a 90-degree angle or an opposition. For me, and I'm using myself as an example, my sun sign is Gemini, but my rising sign is Virgo. So right away, right up front in my personality, I've got a 90-degree angle. It's a square. It's kind of a conflict. I come across as a lot more down-to-earth and practical than I might actually be, and I might come across as more like nervous and stressed out than I might actually be. But what's nice about it is my Gemini, it does ground my Gemini a little bit, so I'm not as like Quicksilver like some of the other Geminis that are out there that can change. I mean, I can stick to things a little bit longer than the average Gemini, and that's because of the Earth energy that I have there. But sometimes I say one thing and mean another, and I don't know how to express myself clearly, and sometimes the conflict is there. And it's not that I'm being deceitful, it's just that I don't know how to put it into words the way I'm feeling. and there's a confusion because I might be pulled into two different directions. And a lot of people, that's something that happens in a lot of people's charts, depending on where the square or the opposition is in the chart. It makes you interesting. It makes you interesting.
Good. I like interesting.
Yeah, so whenever I see like a bunch of conflict in a chart, I mean, it can go one way or the other. If you got too much conflict, you can be a criminal. You don't have enough conflict, you can be a wastrel. So, you want to have a little bit to keep it spicy, but you don't want to have so much that you're like a mental case.
Okay, I can work with that.
Yeah, that's how that works. The other stones that I chose to balance the energies of Virgo, to balance out some of that, like I was going for the more soothing stones as well as so I was picking things like lepidolite and amethyst and blue lace agate and rainbow moonstone, and lepidolite in particular, to help soothe overactive minds and to help for sleep. I remember when I first took one of your classes, you were using that in a sleep pillow.
Yes. I love my sleep pillow, by the way.
Yeah. And the lepidolite has the lithium in it.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's definitely a soothing, calming, gentle stone. And, so especially for mental activity. And Virgo's brains, I mean, talk about monkey mind. I mean, they could really benefit from meditation, but, sleeping with a lepidolite near the bed probably wouldn't hurt either. I also threw in garnet and bloodstone to kind of like fortify the root chakra and the body, you know what I mean? Because, again, all up in their head, they can neglect their body. Sometimes they either overeat or they don't eat enough. And a lot of their drama, because they rule the digestive system. A lot of their stress can come out in the physical manifestation of digestive issues like Crohn's or IBS or just upset stomach. And then of course I picked. I actually found a stone that helps deal with the critical mind, and that was a ragonite. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I'm looking at your pictures here. It's a very interesting stone, by the way. The ones that you have pictured, yeah. I have a raw piece, which is really nice. I use that. I used it a lot in the very beginning when I was first involved with crystals, and I used it for teaching.
Yeah.
And I think I think I had chosen it because it was, and I'm not Virgo, but I had chosen that stone because of its balancing qualities. And you're nervous, and you have people, and you got to talk to them, and you got to tell them something, and they got to understand. And I think that's why I chose that stone initially, because when I first became involved with crystals was around the time that I first became involved in speaking. So that was kind of a new thing for me as well.
Huh.
So it's a very interesting stone.
I like it too. I like. What is it? Right here. Do I have it here? What I like about it is it can have a watery like energy if you get the blue, or it could have more of an earthy energy depending on the earthier colors based upon this chart I have about stones and their elements. And I picked it more because of the easing of the critical mind and the letting go of the nervous energy.
Yeah, which would make sense for people who are speaking as well, because you got to stop being so critical of yourself too.
Exactly.
You can't
that's what stops us.
Yeah, you can't convey your message if you're thinking you're not going to convey the message.
Right. And then I chose rose quartz for self-love, self-forgiveness, opening the heart chakra. But they have to, they have a lot of compassion to spare for everybody in the world except for themselves. I mean, they are a sucker for a sob story. They are very empathetic, yet they don't give that gift to themselves. And I love what Mother Teresa says, like the holiest, like the most religious thing or the spiritual thing you can possibly do is not give away your own food. And they always tell you in the airplane when the oxygen masks drop, put it over your own face before putting on the face of a child. Virgos never put the oxygen mask on themselves first. So I threw rose quartz in there to help a Virgo open their heart chakra and to give themselves the compassion and the loving kindness that they deserve from themselves. They're so willing to give it to others, yet so unwilling to give it to themselves. And that led me to the pink calcite, which I thought would be another great stone for healing, to help release like blocked energy and emotions that get stuck and, paralyzed because of overthinking again and being self-critical. And, I read that pink calcite is really good about connecting the upper chakras to the heart chakra, which is great because Virgo's all up in their head, and that's one way to get them connected to the heart. And it's not that they don't, they're not like, it's not like they have a difficult time allowing themselves to feel. It's just that they work themselves up so much mentally, they don't give themselves the space to feel.
I was lucky enough to find a real nice big chunk of purple calcite, which is really rare. Oh, yeah. It's like pink calcite, only more expensive.
Yeah, I bet. I've never seen it purple.
And is a little tougher to find. And I was at a gem show, and there were two pieces, a big piece, and then my piece. And I hesitated because I thought, I'm going to go back. I'm going to get that big piece. And I hesitated, and the big piece was gone. It was easily 3 times the size of the one that I bought. It's still a large piece, but I hesitated.
That's the worst thing you can do at a rock show. I can't tell you how many times I've messed myself up because I walked away and I thought about it and I came back to get it and it was gone. So I learned my lesson. If I see it and I love it and I'm not sure, I'll pony up, I'll spend the money, because if I don't, I'm going to come back, it'll be gone, and I'll be sad.
Yes. So I learned that lesson
all
too.
The time.
So you could find a purple calcite. I should take a picture of my purple calcite. I'll put that up.
I would love to see it. I've never seen a purple calcite.
Yeah, you walked past it, I don't know how many times at Hands and Paws.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It was the one that I had in the grid that had the little blue jay feather on it.
Oh, okay, I know. I thought it was like a fluorite.
No, that was purple calcite.
How cool.
I wish I had a piece that big of purple fluorite. I'd be so happy.
Well, I'm pretty happy with the big chunk that I got up in Massachusetts.
Oh, and by the way, that's sitting right next to me just as we're speaking.
Really? Mine's next to my bed. I have my grandmother had one of those old school credenzas in her dining room, and she had these Italiante statues. And they were like little Italian cherub boys holding this large basin. It almost looks like a very small bird bath. And she had these big glass fake grapes in both of them. And, I got one of them. The other one, I don't even know where the other one went. But I have my little Italiante cherub boy. And that's where I keep all my stones next to my bed. I have them all in this big, beautiful angel bowl. And it was my
very
grandma.
Cool.
Yeah, and, her energy is amazing. So it was amazing, I should say. She is not on this plane anymore. But, so for me, it's like, my grandma's cool thing is holding all my cool stones right next to my bed.
Very cool. That actually should be, I use a lot of my crystal. In fact, I use that particular purple fluorite. I use that a lot with Reiki work, especially distance work. That should be also a topic of an upcoming show, Reiki and crystals.
Oh, yeah. I've been, my poor Randy, I shouldn't say poor Randy because he's the lucky beneficiary, but, I was experimenting with crystal healing over his chakras while giving him Reiki, and he claims to be metaphysically dense, but he said he felt pretty good when I was done.
Very cool. Yeah, so that'll definitely be an upcoming topic.
Awesome. Maybe even distance healing, how distance healing works, because I think not a lot of people really understand that.
Well, you know what? I think we can cover that when we talk about distance. We talk about Reiki, because there's a lot that goes into Reiki. That could be an entire show in itself.
True. And then, so back to our friends, the Virgos, and I'm sorry, I went off on the tangent. I also include the regular grounding stones that I always suggest for everybody. Smoky quartz, black obsidian, black tourmaline, hematite, snowflake obsidian. What's the other one I like? Sometimes Apache tears I like because they can help connect too. I
like Apache tears too. I have a friend that lives in Arizona, and they're like just all over the place in her backyard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just like throw them in a box and send them my way.
Yeah, really. We don't have much of those around here.
No, I said I'll send you some peridot, which is like pennies on the dollar out here in Connecticut.
Same with garnet. Same with garnet.
So that's good. Let's our next show, just to give a little teaser for our next show, is going to be an interview with the Daryl Waters Connor.
Woo!
Woohoo! One of my favorite people in the world, by the way. So we'll have some interesting stories for her, and she'll talk a little bit about her journey and what has kind of taken her. So she's very interesting, and I absolutely adore her. She's definitely on my top 10 of most favorite people in the world.
I love her blog.
Oh, my God, her blog is awesome.
I love checking in with the farm.
I'm lucky enough to have been at her house, too, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Did you get to play with the goats?
She didn't have goats at the time.
Oh.
So that was pre-goats.
That's awesome.
So, and just another little reminder, this show is going to be aired in the middle of August, and in September we're going to do a treasure hunt on our Facebook group. So we will post a link in the group. It's a lot of fun, and we invite everybody to come and join us. So until 2 weeks from now, we'll see you again.
Yes.
All right. Anything else you want to add about Virgo before we wrap it up?
Well, this is a mean thing to say because I don't like to be manipulative, but if you want to make a Virgo like you, be smart, be relatively self-sufficient, and act like you don't need them too much. But at the same time, compliment them and tell them how much you rely on their good advice. And I hate, because that really gets their ego pumped. And what they also tend to like is they have a wild streak that they don't very often indulge. If you're the kind of person that can make them go on the cyclone at Coney Island, you might win their heart. And I hate to tell it. People always ask me, like, well, if I want to get this one to like me, what should I do? And I always feel kind of bad about that because, not one size fits all. But, if you can show Virgo a little bit of an adventure and get them to lighten up a little bit, that goes a long way towards worming your way into their heart.
Very cool. And also, I will have on our Facebook group a PDF of some of the stones that we've talked about tonight that you can download and have an idea of what they look like.
That's very cool.
With on that note, good night, Laura.
Good night, Mary.
And I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.